Welcome on in to another extravagant edition, a live edition, a post NFL draft edition of the Between the Hash Marks podcast. As always, I'm Matt Lombardo, joined by my friend, colleague, mentor, the purveyor of the Two Deep Zone. Mike Tanier is here. Michael, we made it. The draft is over. We're across the finish line. The picks have been made, and now it's time for the analysis, paralysis by overanalysis to kick in.
How are you doing?
I am fried. My brain is completely fried after this weekend. The late nights on Thursday and Friday, writing the column on Saturday during the draft. I had the bright idea, my father did, that this would be the best weekend for him to come and help replace some boards on my deck. So the first day after the draft, I spent doing back-breaking labor in the afternoon. But other than that, I'm just peachy. I'm fine. I'm glad to be here with you.
It sounds good. My internet is fried, which is why we're a little late going on. I hope that we don't have any interruptions here. But yeah, I was joking about how I kind of got a little cross-faded on Saturday night and passed out on the couch. And the moment I said I passed out on the couch, my internet passed out as well.
Yeah, that was a bad omen. So hopefully we can make it through this podcast. And if you enjoy the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe in the Apple Podcast Store. You can check us out on YouTube, on my YouTube channel at Matt Lombardo 975. And if you do subscribe in the Apple Podcast Store, please leave us a 5-star rating and a quick review. If you want to tell us what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show, maybe a guest or two that you'd like to see on the show, leave it in a 5-star review. You can rip us if you want. If you want to do that, we will read every 5-star review from the Apple Podcast Store on the show, Mike. And of course, if you enjoy the post-draft recap and coverages, if you enjoy Mike's brand of firebrand storytelling, the analytics deep dives, all of those things, make sure you check out and subscribe to the Two Deep Zone on Substack. You can subscribe to Between the Hash Marks on Substack as well. Keeps the lights on around here, keeps the internet up and running.
Keeps the internet up and running. And from the looks of things, we need your help. So please help. Like, subscribe, do all the things that help us get attention in this attention economy.
Yes, and this draft class got a lot of attention going in for all of the wrong reasons. And we talked about this last week on the show. You and I talked about it on air and off. We wrote about it for months. This was not the deepest of draft classes. This was not a heralded class. I had agents telling me that they were hearing that nobody wanted to draft in this class. I had executives telling me going in that 2/3 of the first-round picks wouldn't have first-round grades. It seems like the way teams operated on Thursday night and then throughout the weekend, that the anticipation, the expectation going in, keeping expectations low, seemed to be how teams approached this thing and how it played out.
Yeah, and you wrote about it in your column. Obviously, the Bengals noped out. We'll take Dexter Jackson, thank you. The Broncos noped out. We'll take Jalen Waddle, thank you. We will gladly take salary rather than picking this draft. And then you had teams at the end like the Bills sliding out of it, the 49ers sliding out of it, teams doing everything they could to get out of having to expend too much draft capital. If they weren't getting one of the top 10 guys, we will talk about the Giants a little bit, or if they didn't have a very specific need that they thought that they needed to address.
Yeah, and you look at how this draft played out. The Eagles in the third round, they ditched 2 third-round picks to bring in Jonathan Bernard, which we'll talk about. You look at the second round, you look at the San Francisco 49ers reportedly spending all day trying to trade out of number 33, trying to trade out of the catbird seat in the second round. They couldn't find any takers, so they just selected another wide receiver after signing Mike Evans in this offseason. And Mike, it really feels like, and I touched on this in the column, it was actually the lead, that the NFL in a lot of ways now is competing with NIL money in college football, which is great. And it's overdue that college football players are getting a bigger piece of the revenue pie for what has become $1 billion industry with major college football. But there are ripple-on effects for the NFL, for player development. And we saw it maybe more extreme than ever show its effects during this year's draft.
That's absolutely true. And I know you got like some insider info that you want to get to here. I think it's true that it had an impact this year, but I'm curious how long it's going to have such an impact. What were people telling you?
Yeah, I spoke to an assistant general manager on Friday going into the second round just to kind of get his thoughts on what happened on Thursday night and kind of how it seemed like towards the end of the draft, we started seeing guys that you and I talked about as second or third round grades going off the board in picks 20 through 32.
Yeah.
It just seemed like the value fell off around pick 20, 23, somewhere in there. And he told me, quote, when 40 juniors go back to school for 2026, that's about a full round of the draft that just vanished. Hence, when you look at Thursday night and the first round, many players were overdrafted by half a round or more. Just look at Ty Simpson and Omar Cooper. Those two probably fit that bill. Teams have to take somebody, so it's needs and traits, I guess, unquote.
Needs and traits. And oddly enough, it wasn't like, well, what's this guy's upside? Because 25-year-olds were going off the board. Because if I'm doing needs and traits, I might get a Kedrick Falk. Give me the really big dude who's 21 but was already a team captain, because I can wait a couple of years for him. Now, I'll say this. If all you had to do for this draft board is if you stuck Jeremiah Smith and, let's say, Dante Moore. We don't even need Arch Manning. Put Dante Moore and Jeremiah Smith at the top of this draft board. 75% of the complaining by people like us goes away, because we have two quarterbacks to talk about, and we can talk about a guy like Smith. Will the Jets take him? Will he fall to the Giants? And for our purposes, we'd be done. But here's my thing about the NIL. Assistant general manager lives in this world. He knows what he's talking about. I think it kind of peaked this year. Like, this is the year where it hit like this critical mass. Suddenly, we're even hearing about guys like, hey, he was offered $4 million to stay in college. He was offered $5 million. That wasn't the case 5-6 years ago. It started to be the case last year, the year before. It hit like a critical mass this year. I don't think this is a long-term problem. I think this year, next year, it settles itself. Because you know what? These guys have to come out of some type, right?
Yeah, my thing is it's twofold. Along those lines, I just look at the team that I follow closest in college football, Penn State. You look at Drew Aller, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Dani Dennis Sutton. If all of those guys had come out last year, Drew Aller might be a first-round pick based on those quarterbacks. So, Nick Singleton might have been a day 2 pick rather than waiting to Saturday. But because they're a year older, because it's another year of injuries, because it's a year of subpar play in a season that went off the rails for whatever reason, their stocks kind of plummeted. So while I agree with you that I think this was the critical mass year and it kind of like reshuffled the board in terms of who guys are at this point when they're coming out, I do wonder what the long-term byproduct is if it's going to be a bunch of 24-year-old dudes rather than a bunch of 22-year-old dudes who are coming out because they're now going to take that extra year in college football. What they are, do they stay a year and get better because they're developing in the same program? Or is it what we saw in Happy Valley where you stay a year too late and it's like your stock plummets because you're not coming out at the top of your game, so to speak, at the top of your draft stock?
It's so subtle and it's so nuanced, because Happy Valley's losses were Indiana's gains for guys like Surratt, for guys like Cooper, for Mendoza showing up number 1 overall, which he wasn't, I don't think, coming into the year on a lot of boards. So you have that element of things. I think what's here to stay is less 20, 21-year-old prospects, more 22, 23-year-old prospects. And for somebody like me who really looks at the age of the prospects, you have to get used to the idea, well, 23, look what they did their senior year. And there were lots of 23-year-olds they were playing against. It wasn't like they were out there against 18-year-olds. I'm still going to, I think, hold the line for these 24, 25-year-olds. He's had 6 years, 7 years in college. Some of that will go away because there was still COVID stuff mixed into that in terms of eligibility and all. But in the quarterback realm, what you're going to see, I think a lot of teams are going to get used to the idea of saying, okay, here's a quarterback, a Carson Beck, for example. He stayed in college for a couple $1 million, changed programs. That's going to be very common. They're going to be looking at that as the AAA baseball year. That was your promotion to AAA. We as NFL evaluators know you're going to a new system. You got to win over a new locker room. You got to learn a new program from a new coach. Now show us what you did there, because that's showing your transitional skills to the NFL, for example. Okay. And different people approach that different ways. Mendoza take this incredible leap forward. Aller gets hurt. Nussmeier gets hurt. Simpson opts out of the whole thing and winds up, with the ring around the rosy. We'll get to that. But it's a new developmental challenge that creates all these unusual cases that are going to become more usual in the years to come.
I think the quarterback is going to be the really interesting case study, right? Because it's going to become, in theory, if a guy is playing more reps at a big time college program, whatever it might be, whether you're at Ohio State, you transfer to Clemson, or you're at LSU, you transfer to USC, or you're at Miami and you wind up at Indiana, whatever it is, if you're playing more snaps of major college football, I would think would develop you into a better, more pro ready NFL quarterback because you have more game experience, you have more big game experience, you have more reps. But the last two quarterback classes, that just hasn't been what translates. And for the last years, we've talked about it being a quarterback crisis. Next year might be different with Dante Moore and LaNorris Sellers and Arch Manning. We talked about the same thing with Aller and Nussmeier and Cade Klubnik going into this year. If these guys develop, great. But if they don't, if we go into next March and April and we're talking about this being a down year for a quarterback, the NFL is going to have to find some way to adapt to fix it, I would think, right?
But maybe more information is better, and there are two things happening. The NFL is getting more information, while we're getting more reasons to be pessimistic from the media standpoint, where we look at this guy and say, oh, he fell off his senior year, oh, he fell off, he did that, et cetera. We just have more data. We don't have these guys who showed up like shiny pennies and said, here I am, come draft me. But it's nuanced, so we're going to have to see. Because you're right. I'm looking at these guys like, oh, next year's class, we got Moore, we got Manning. We could be in the same conversation. This guy got hurt, this guy fell off. Moore, I think, was starting to be like, oh, we see all the weaknesses in his development. Now, he could develop next year. That's what they need to show. It becomes different at the quarterback level. At some of these other levels, again, you're going to have a hard time ever selling me on the 24, 25-year-old wide receiver prospect as anything but a guy you're bringing in for special teams to draft in the third, fourth round. We saw a lot of those guys. We saw Mesidor, who's a heck of a player, 25-year-old, playing at college level. It is just hard to gauge what you're really looking at in cases like that.
And I wonder what the next step is, because I think there needs to be a pendulum swing from the NFL side of this, because if you look at the rookie wage scale was absolutely necessary when you started to see some of the insane contracts that were going to quarterbacks who were chosen first or second overall without ever playing an NFL snap. But you're now directly competing with NIL money. And I do wonder when you have the next TV rights deal, the books being thrown open on that sometime over the next two seasons, when you see in the next CBA a likely 18th regular season game, if we have multiple drafts where teams are kind of scratching their heads and trying to figure out who to fill out their drafts with and trading into future years, if we have one or two more drafts like this, I do wonder if there's going to be not just a higher salary cap for everyone because of the increased TV money coming in, but if the rookie wage scale is going to have to be higher in order to justify and make it a conversation again for kids taking the NIL money to stay versus the upside and the upshot of a higher ceiling on the rookie wage scale in the NFL. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. NFL isn't going to raise wages if it doesn't have to. It's got to be the players' union that says we want the wages raised. And that will become an interesting question because players' unions, all unions, tend to protect the guys who are in the union now, not the next group of guys. So that becomes a weird thing. Now, when the NFL puts, okay, guys, 18th regular season game is coming, what little scraps do you want in exchange for this? Because if you play nice with this, we'll give you the scraps. Okay, we're not giving you franchise tag. We're not giving you that. We're not giving you fully guaranteed salaries. Get real, that's not going to happen. If the NFLPA says, let's revisit how the rookie scale is going, let's throw more money into that, NFL will look at that. That's pennies on the dollar. Compared to quarterback contracts, compared to other things like that, throwing more money into year one bonuses for first-round picks, that is pennies on the dollar. And if the league says, wait a minute, we give you that, you shut up about the 18th game and go out there and play it, that's a win. Let's go. 10-year contract. Let's deal it. Do it. So that's one of the permutations we could see a couple of years down the line.
What I think is also interesting about this whole conversation is I remember, I do some self-scouting before I put my content out there for this draft. Like I'll go back and look at, hey, what did I write last year? How did I frame the Monday column? And of course, you had the Shedeur conversation, kind of how did everything play out? A lot of the conversations I was having with people last year was about how it wasn't a great draft. Last year wasn't a great draft, and you look back at the names that were off the board in the first 2 rounds, and there's a Tyler Warren there, and there's an Abdul Carter there, and there's a Ashton Genty there, and there are guys who made immediate major impacts throughout that draft. I wonder if we're all kind of just we're analyzing this, we're talking to people about it. I do wonder if maybe the draft process is just too long and drawn out, that we're kind of missing the forest for the trees. And some of these guys that we're thinking aren't first round talents or aren't second round talents, we're going to look at this next year and say, you know what, those are pretty damn good rookie players. I just wonder if maybe it's our perception of things that is why this is a down draft. You know what I mean?
I kept wondering, do I feel burned out because the class was bad, or does the class look bad to me because I'm feeling burned out? And whenever I would hit those particular walls, I would look around for somebody with expertise. I'm like, no, this is a bad draft. And our profession is full of contrarians who love doing no, it's not. No, it's not. I mean, I know so many people who this is not a bad draft. You just don't see it with the depth and appreciate it on many angles I do. Couldn't find that person. Couldn't find that person anywhere on the World Wide Web. So this was a weak one. Last year's was a weak quarterback draft. Honestly, that's what I thought of it. And I don't exactly remember what it was strong at, but guys like Ted McMillan were really good. Jackson Dart turned out to have a really good year. This is the weakest one since the year it was Lane Johnson, but also Luke Joeckel and that kid who was the Chiefs offensive lineman for years, and Geno Smith and Taven Austin. I think that was 2013 maybe. This was the weakest one ever. That one was second weak. So I'm going 20 years of history here. I've never seen a draft where it's oh gosh, that guy's going in the late teens. Really? Blake Miller? Really? That's kind of how I was approaching this, even in the middle of round one.
And there were so many guys going off the board late in round one where I'm like, oh, I thought he was a second round prospect. I thought he was somebody you could get in the third round on Friday night. And he's getting picked in the first round. So yes, I think that the fact that we saw this, the fact that teams seemed like they were reaching for traits rather than finding value, I thought that really told about the weakness of this class. But as he has tended to do in recent years, at least on paper, at least first glance, it seems like Howie Roseman and the Eagles didn't just stick to a tried and true formula, but at least early on, it seems like they knocked it out of the park compared to what they might have been able to do with the draft pool that was sitting there for them.
Well, I think it starts with Jonathan Greenard. And this is somebody they've been circling for weeks, and this has been going back and forth. You get an edge rusher in, and we can argue, because I talk about it a little bit, it's gosh, Jalen Phillips would have just been fine in that spot, wouldn't he? Or Josh Sweat. But okay, what's done is done. Now you're looking at this board. You get Greenard. One of the third-round picks the Eagles give up is next year's.
Yeah.
So it's I'm paying you Tuesday for the hamburger today. They get the deal signed right away, and you get this instant upgrade edge rusher for, again, you're talking about the third round of this draft. There were decent guys out there. There was nobody you can say this is probably a 10-sack contributor when healthy.
There was no Jonathan Greenard sitting there in the third round, just like there was no Dexter Lawrence sitting there at number 10 for the Bengals. And these are two franchises that, I mentioned this to somebody on Blue Sky today. I think that we're entering divergent paths in the NFL. The teams picking in the top 10 of future drafts are probably going to look at this and say, all right, I could probably get an instant blue chip contributor or two like the Giants did. Teams like the Bengals, teams like the Eagles, teams that are on the cusp, they might start looking at these draft picks as trade capital rather than investments in the future. And I really like the Greenard trade for a lot of reasons. One, it checks a big box for a big need. It eliminates reaching. And I talked to Brian Baldinger about this, briefly on Saturday morning. He said, quote, Greenard walks into that building as their best pass rusher by far. He knows how to attack. He never stops working. He has skills, effort, and mindset all combined, unquote. I think it's all you could ask for in the third round. But I wrote about this in the column. It's almost like the Eagles' forward-thinking vision in how they draft has become a core value, and they just stick to it every single year, and it allows them to be able to sit out a $20 million guaranteed Nakobe Dean spending spree. It allows them to sit out $25 million to Reed Blankenship over 3 years because they drafted Jihad Campbell last spring, knowing that Kobe Dean was a free agent. They drafted Andrew Makuba, knowing that Reed Blankenship was going to be a free agent. They drafted Cam Jurgens when they had Jason Kelsey with 1 or 2 good years remaining. They drafted Jordan Mailata and let him sit behind Jason Peters for 2 or 3 years. They drafted in this draft Eli Stowers with Dallas Goedert, knowing you're not going to re-sign him again. You drafted Mekhi Lemon, traded up for him, knowing you're going to trade A.J. Brown on June 1. They constantly recycle the development pool. They stay away from the salary cap. They don't have to chase the Jalen Phillips bank-breaking, market-setting contract because you get a Grenard. It just seems like they're one of the few organizations that seems to have threaded the needle behind the timing of drafting, developing, and getting these guys ready to play when the veterans are ready to go and cash in elsewhere.
Right, and this was a very bold, aggressive Eagles weekend because you have the thudding obviousness of the A.J. Brown trade right now. You have the going up and stealing Mekhi Lemon from the Steelers, which, simultaneously makes Howie look more like a wizard and makes Omar Khan and Mike McCarthy look more like a bunch of doofuses. But then brings in a player that, again, smooths the transition away from A.J. Brown. You get so much of these things, and you talk about that. Yeah, there's this vision. There's a long-range vision. Howie sticks to it, and he's also not precious about it. He said in interviews, it's like, in the last couple of years, it was defense because we had a lot of older, expensive guys on defense, and we need to get younger. Now, the expenses on offense, the older guys are on offense, so I have to address offense. And he goes out and addresses offense. And you know that they want to refurbish the offense from a playmaker standpoint, and we saw that. And it's like, well, how's it going to manifest itself? Now we can see it. Now you can see. You can agree with it, disagree with it, but A.J. Brown is gone. It's like you talk about that Packers model. It's like that Packers model right now. Here's 2 tight ends who can catch. Here's 4 different guys who can be interchangeably slot guys moving in and out. My question with that is, and of course with the elephant in the room, which is Cole Payton, how much of an on-notice situation is this for Jalen Hurts?
I think it's completely on notice. I think it really is because, look, it worked with A.J. Brown while A.J. Brown was happy. You had the alpha dog where you could throw it up. A.J. Brown's going to go get it. You won a Super Bowl. You went to 2 that way. You really crafted an offense built around Saquon Barkley in the running game and A.J. Brown over the top. This is different. This is, I'm going to have Devonta Smith as a number 1 and a bunch of 2A and 3 wide receivers that are going to run all kinds of different route concepts. We're going to, exploit the middle of the field. We're going to, run different route concepts. The intermediate middle, which is not a strong point of Jalen Hurts' game. I don't think that the quarterback pick this week puts him on notice. I think that needing to show that you can thrive in this system and win this way, I think it puts Jalen Hurts on notice that it's not quite put up or shut up time, but you better not regress again as you did this past year.
Show us that you're willing to change. Show us you're willing to change. And Cole Payton is not a serious threat to your job, but it's a little bit of I see you, we're here. There's a little, I can't imagine there's no messaging involved by taking a North Dakota State quarterback and all the signs and portents that come to that to say, yeah, we are always striving to get better, Jalen. So right now, yeah, he's competing with Kyle McCord or whatever, but we are always striving to get better, Jalen. You're on notice. I think Nick Sirianni is on notice to some degree too. If the bottleneck with the way this offense looked was not Jalen, but it was Nick Sirianni, where guys would be trying to put new ideas in and there'd be a threshold at which Nick Sirianni's like, no. The concept here is get the ball to the big guys, up the sidelines. If that was it, he's on this too, because they don't have those players anymore. They've got slot guys. They've got work the middle guys. So everyone's going to have to adjust to this if it's going to succeed.
And work the middle has not been the hallmark of Jalen Hurts' game. And I think that when you look at Cole Payton coming in, you heard Mel Kiper talk about there being a package of plays. Maybe you see a reinvention of the tush push or something where maybe Cole Payton is the quarterback on the field, and instead of the push, it'll be a quick out to Dallas Goedert over the middle. You'll see more variance, but it might not be Hurts in those variance situations. You're going to see a lot of route concepts that weren't the strength and the bread and butter of the offense previously. say Hurts is going to he's going to need to deliver because that's the personnel they brought in. That's the scheme they're importing. I think you're going to see a lot more 2 tight end sets than you saw from them in the past. And you're going to see a lot less of go routes because you don't have the go route burner on the other side.
Right. Who is the go route? I guess Hollywood Brown's the go route guy. I mean, Devontae Smith can run a go route. Maybe it's Dontavian because he's a big target going up the sidelines there, whatever. They're probably going to have to sort that stuff out. By the way, my favorite, I saw people arguing, it's like, what do you mean Jalen Hurts can't throw over the middle? Yes, he can. It's like, maybe he can. He doesn't. He doesn't. So, you can show me statistics that they were efficient, in the 8 passes he threw or whatever. Don't rewrite history here. For years, Jalen Hurts has been at the bottom of the league in throwing passes over the middle. Don't show me one GIF. Don't just say, yes, he can. Don't give me an EPA statistic based on like 9 passes. Look at the overall body of work. Something he's reluctant to do. We've all watched enough Eagles games to see open guys running the crossing route. That's a 6-yard completion. It's AJ. AJ's running the cross. That's a 6-yard. Maybe he breaks a tackle. And Jalen's looking for big plays up the sidelines. That's what's got to change.
There's a lot of things that Jalen Hurts does well, and I think he's a plus vertical passer in the deep vertical passing game. I think he does a great job of taking command of the offense. I think he does an outstanding job when you get him involved in the running game, but it's those middle and intermediate throws that need to get better. This wasn't the shot across the bow. The shot across the bow would have been taking an hour in the third round. We're taking Carson Beck, at some point. That would have been the shot across the bow. This is just, all right, we're going to reinvent things. We're going to maybe limit the physical punishment that you're taking in the tush-push situations and in running game situations. This is an insurance policy on Tanner McKee being elsewhere next year as your backup and our recycling or developmental backup quarterback if we can trade Tanner McKee. This is not a shot across the bow, in my opinion, Jalen Hurts at all.
Well, no, but I think more like Lemon, Stowers, everybody. It's a reminder that everyone is expected to improve. By the way, Carson Beck wouldn't have been a shot across the bow. It would have been like 6 shots of Crown Royal Black across my lips the moment it happened if he was coming to Philadelphia. And Drew Aller is somebody else's, lipstick on the collar reminder of what's going on. I mean, we talk about that if you want, but weren't we going to? What's next?
What's next? I was going to talk about how the Giants closed the gap a little bit. The Giants closed the gap and narrowed the gap a little in the NFC East.
The team that narrowed the gap, okay, we can argue about, is the Cowboys.
I love the first-round picks. Love them.
I love the first-round picks. So I will start with the Giants. Obviously, 2 phenomenal players right off the bat, and I'll say 3 phenomenal players in Colton Hood. 1 phenomenal player leaving in Dexter Lawrence. So that's like, 2.5 steps forward, 1 step back. And then you get to Malachi Fields, and I was like, whoopsie doodle. I don't think this was a good pick. They traded up to get him when they shouldn't be trading up. They should just be grabbing guys. And Malik Neighbors might still be hurt. Yeah. And is also going into Diva Zone. He's on DivaCon 4 at this point because he's chirping about, you got the wrong Ohio State guy and doing stuff like that. So, while I like what the Giants did, there's sort of a threshold on how excited I can be because, again, they had to get rid of one of their core guys to make this happen.
Yeah, I love Arvell Reese. I think he was defensive player number 1 on my board. I think it creates all kinds of optionality in how you move those linebackers around. You should be trying to enable to trade Kayvon Thibodeau at this point, I would think, based on bringing Arvell Reese. But who knows? I mean, they can't seem to unload him. But the Colton Hood pick, I think, is really fascinating because if you can't get Caden McDonald, which great move by the Houston Texans, by the way, that's a move they had to make. I love the value there. I love the fit. Would have been a seamless transition from Dexter Lawrence if you could have got him in the second round. But you get Colton Hood, who's probably a top 15 or so talent at a position that you desperately needed to upgrade at corner. You and I are a little different on Malachi Fields because I think he's more of like that possession receiver, kind of a chains mover, big-bodied, 50-50 ball type of guy. They didn't really have that. You had Malik Neighbors. You had Darius Slayton, who is somewhat of a big play threat, I guess, sometimes. Yeah. But you have a possession guy now.
I need to live in a world where when we talk about the Giants, we don't say the names Kayvon Thibodeau Darius Slayton. And who's the third one? Predict who I'm about to say next.
Well, we got rid of Wan'Dale Robinson.
Evan Neal. I never want to think about these individuals again. Okay. Slayton was Daniel Jones's binky. That was like 6 binkies ago. Kayvon Thibodeau, they've been trying to trade him since like 4 minutes, the first time he slept through a meeting. Where was I? I just lost my train of thought.
You might not have to worry about Evan Neal because they drafted Francis Mayorga, right? They drafted one of the top 2 offensive tackles in this class. It's a meat and potatoes, efficient, competent draft that they haven't had across the board. They've had some nice picks. I mean, you get Andrew Thomas, you get an Abdul Carter, you get Malik Neighbors. They've had some nice picks. This was an efficient, professional draft by Dawn Aponte and John Harbaugh, and in some ways, I guess Joe Schoen was probably involved in writing a few of the scouting reports.
Right. He was writing his LinkedIn and he was writing the scouting reports. LinkedIn scouting reports. Yes. Love Moraga, love Reese. I really do love Hood. I recognize you can't get everything done at once, which again is why I don't like the trade up. Maybe you could have gotten more bodies at defensive tackle. I got no knowledge of Bobby Jamison Travis. By the time he was picked, there was only one Jamison on my mind. It comes in a bottle. Okay. But and we can talk about closing the gap. I just think there's a lot of gap there for the Giants. That's why I want to switch gears to the Cowboys.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get 2 first-round picks, a couple of guys I really like at the top of the first round, Caleb Downs, Malachi Lawrence. One of the best players on the board at safety. Cowboys love these safeties. Going back to like Roy Williams, they always just love a big safety. Malachi Lawrence is somebody I had a probably higher selection on for anybody except Stephen Jones. A lot of upside, really good guy. I'm not a big Jason Barham fan. They got D. Winters.
Yeah.
They just got D. Winters, that's a starting caliber. You talk about meat and potatoes linebacker. He's younger. He was like the only guy who stayed healthy, so he's immune to the cell phone tower or whatever that thing is, the power station. He's immune to that. They're going to bring him in, and it just sort of just bunch him in, solves a problem there. Also added LT Overton in the 4th round. I'm not an LT Overton super fan, but that's the kind of guy that could have helped maybe a Giants line. They're hanging around the 4th round. Big, thick, thumpy rotation. He's a little bit like DeMarcus Lawrence, maybe not in that caliber, so to speak, can play that role. A lot of quality players. It sounds like there's not going to be George Pickens drama. Wait and see. They re-signed their kicker. Again, that was one of those weird, dumb things I thought the Cowboys were going to have trouble with. Defense looks like it could be the 17th best in the NFL with an offense that's going to clock a lot of people.
Yeah, they did what they had to do. And you and I were both kind of screaming about this going into the draft, that what they needed to do was address the defense, upgrade the talent on the defense. They did it with a top 3 talent in Caleb Downs. They got Lawrence, who's going to step in and be an immediate contributor in the pass rush. They checked 2 really big boxes right away. They got better. And with an offense, as long as you can keep George Pickens focused, as long as you're not trading him come August for pennies on the dollar because you couldn't move him during the draft, you have an offense that could score 34 points per game, right? I mean, that's just what it is. Now you have a defense that just needs to hold teams under 27, and you're going to win a lot of games. And I think that they have a chance to do that. They upgraded the talent across the board. I think the NFC's got a lot more competitive because I think it sounds like I'm higher on the Giants going into this in year 2 of Jackson Dart than you are. But I think that those 2 teams really help themselves in a lot of ways, not just for 2026, but in terms of the trajectory going forward from here. I think it's up and to the right for both of those teams.
Yeah, I think Harbaugh is going to really help that team. Worried about the Neighbors injury. I'm worried about how much culture shifting Harbaugh is looking at right now and thinking he has to do. One thing about the Cowboys, they're born into that darkness. There's never any good culture there. They just go out there, right out there with like the most talented dudes they can, and sometimes they win 12 games, and they could be in that direction here. I wanted to hit you, though. We kind of went off. You had the Giants. You had a high grade on the Giants. I think I did, too. You had a high grade on the Jets. I have a pretty high one on the Jets. High grade on the Browns. I'll tell you what, Jets, Giants, Browns, who's your winner of those 3?
I think it's the Jets, but it's not just the Jets. It's whoever the quarterback is for the Jets next year. Whether that's Arch Manning, whether that's Lenora Sellers, whether that's Dante Moore. Think about what they just did. They went out and they got Kenyon Sadiq, who is an elite pass catching, after the catch yak machine at tight end. They get Omar Cooper, who's really athletic in terms of a pass catcher, really good in the red zone, an area that they've been really bad the last couple of years. They got speed guys all over the field now on defense by, taking plug and play David Bailey, who you liked for them situationally better than Arvell Reese. You've made the defense better. And I love the D'Angelo Pons pick, because they've kind of remade that secondary. You bring in Nahshon Wright from the Chicago Bears, 5 interceptions a year ago. Seems like his career is on the upward path. You bring in Pons, who's really athletic, especially in zone situations. You brought in Minkah Fitzpatrick over the offseason. You've gotten competent there. And, the lottery ticket in the 4th round in Cade Klubnik is a pick that I like a lot. Because I like it situationally for them. Because I don't think that the Saints, when they took Tyler Shough in the 2nd round, thought he's our quarterback of the future. I think that they liked him. They took him. He had the chance to play. Oh my God, look who we found in Tyler Shough. We can build around this guy. If the Jets are like a 5-win team after Thanksgiving, you can play Cade Klubnik for 4 or 5 weeks to close out the year, and you can really evaluate what he is. And if you have Tyler Shough and Cade Klubnik, you have 3 first-round picks next year to build around him, right? Like, if you think that if he shows that you can be the guy, great. You have 3 blue chips you can add. And if he stinks, if he's not a guy, if he's just a mediocre young backup, you have 3 first-round picks to go get your franchise quarterback next year. I think you've created optionality for yourself with that pick in the 4th round.
I think we're going to disagree on that. I think the Saints will be looking for a quarterback again in 2027. I think Shough is a late season mirage built around like these sort of last-second wins. Klubnik, I don't like. Now, if you were talking about 6th or 7th round lottery ticket, and say, we bring in Klubnik, he had some success early in his career at Clemson. He's an RPO guy. He can work in the structure of this thing that we built. Like, maybe they traded up to get him. They traded an extra 4th round pick to go out and get this guy. They traded somebody who could have been more bodies on their defense, more bodies on their offensive line. So beyond that, I'm higher on Bailey, Sadiq, and Cooper. Maybe not as high as you, but we're higher than a lot of people. So I hear the scuttlebutt I've seen from the Jets world. Okay. And I disagree with this, but I don't think it's foolishness. It should have been Arvell. Okay. Number 2. And then it could have been, say, Mekhi Lemon instead of Sadiq, and then whoever you want in place of Cooper, maybe Stowers, maybe some other tight end, maybe a different receiver. And they had to trade up for Cooper. They could have had that extra pick later on, who again could have turned into another guy. Now,
counter argument to that is it's an awful draft. So if I think that Klubnik in the 4th round can be a developmental guy, I don't give a shit about giving up a 4th round pick. If it's a camp body that I'm taking in the 4th round, I'd rather have a quarterback that I like that I can try to develop. If I think that Omar Cooper fits the traits and the skill sets that I need out of my number 2 receiver in Frank Reich's offense, or I want a guy who's more shorthanded than just a burner, then because I'm going to have a young quarterback in there at some point, I'm going to go and get Cooper. I don't get too worked up in this particular draft about trading draft capital for guys that I like. In a stronger draft class, I'm with you. If we're looking at this draft, we're saying, oh, wow, this is a deep draft, and you're going to get starting caliber players as late as like the 5th round, that it's just loaded and it's deep at all these positions.
Right.
This just wasn't it. I mean, to me, this is like taking a bad draft and trying to go up and get your guy.
But I think that's what it was. For Cooper, that's fine. Especially because the Jets had all these extra picks lying around. It's like we're going to burn some of this because we have a guy we think is going to be a starting wide receiver. The further you get down in it and you start talking about Klubnik, you're the Jets. This may be a bad draft, but you're a bad team. You're a very bad team who gutted yourself over a lot of your key players in the last couple of years. You need to create competition at a lot of these positions. And the moment you're not creating some of these creating that competition, you run the risk of saying, hey, Demario Davis is our starter this year, and next year we're like the Saints now. It's Demario Davis again because we never got this other guy. So for some of these teams, I like rewarding them for getting warm bodies. I don't think the Jets did as good a job as they should have. I think the Giants did quite as good a job. I think the Browns did a very good job getting all of these extra bodies where they're picking several times in the 5th round, getting guys in the 2nd round that I had like 1st round grades on, and cleaned up all these portions of the roster that they have to clean up on the cheap because they're paying so much discussball dollars to their quarterback.
I think we need to get Ty Dunn on the phone for his next long-form feature. Maybe you and I need to combine resources to figure this out. Was this Andrew Berry flexing his muscles, finally not being beholden to Kevin Stefanski? Or was this Todd Monken walking into Berea and slapping his hands on the table and saying, this is my show now? Because there was something philosophically different about this Browns draft. You talk about meat and potatoes drafts. You talk about, competency. You talk about what they were able to get. They trade back to get more draft capital and the warm bodies that you're speaking of. And they take Fano, who they probably would have taken at number 6. He was the first offensive lineman off the board. If you would have taken him at 6 and you would have liked it, I'm going to love taking him at 9 or whatever it was. You get KC Concepcion, another yards after the catch machine, short hands on quick routes. If you want to kind of speed up the clock in the pocket for Shedeur Sanders or whoever your quarterback is to get rid of the ball quicker and get yards after the catch, KC Concepcion's your man. Denzel Boston, really reliable receiver. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren in round 2, and maybe I'm nuts, but I had him as like a top 20 player in this draft, top 10 defensive prospects. You get him in round 2, and you're stacking the deck with warm bodies late. I love what the Browns did, and I think that if they ever make some hay and make headway in the AFC North or do it quickly with Monken, we're going to look at this draft as the foundational moment for them where they started putting some pillars in the ground to build this thing.
If 8 years where they were supposed to be some Moneyball team, and Barry was brought in by the last set of Moneyball guys before they left. First time it felt Moneyballish, where it's like, yes, we know we need to trade down. We know that we need to create these extra picks. We know we have to sort of mix potential upside with filling warm bodies. What's interesting about it is they were so desperate a couple of, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, they did not have an offensive line. They had 2 offensive linemen under contract on the entire roster, and they were like backups. It was DeJuan Jones and Tevin Jenkins or something like that. Got a couple of guys via free agency, via trades. Then they come into this draft. You get Fano, and like you said, they traded down to get extra guys. I don't have Barber was like a guy, and I don't even know much about Parker Brayford. I wasn't doing much like Alabama offensive line scouting except for the edges there. They now have enough bodies to create competition. So that we solved that problem. Wide receiver was the same thing. Wide receiver was Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, Leviathan or whatever that kid's name is, Bartafin, whatever that Gage Lubutis. I forget the kid's name. He was always on the field. We were like, who is this kid? So now when you throw Concepcion and Boston out there, it's like, okay, Concepcion, Boston, you Jeudy in there, Tillman can be your number 4. And okay, all these tight ends, Fannin from last year, you got these other guys you brought in. I think we're kind of okay. It's a functional offense. Is it good? Yeah. Can they score more than 3, 6, 9 points every week? Probably, if they sort the quarterback situation out to just below averageness. And they did add Taylor Green, which is going to make Taylor injury, which is going to make things weird in the quarterback room for days and weeks to come.
Yeah, that's the one pick that I kind of scratched my head at.
Yeah.
The one year where you have 2 developmental dudes, Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, who you picked last year. Why are you taking a dude in the 5th or 6th round on Saturday at quarterback this year? And you spent a whole year trying to trade Dylan Gabriel, right? You're gonna try to do that again? And a great draft for the Browns overall. Head scratcher of a pick, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wonder what they're thinking in there. They did have a couple days looking at everybody.
Yeah.
They know they want Deshaun Watson to play, but they don't want him to play. And I think they know he probably isn't that excited about playing football anymore. And they're probably trying to guess their way through how to motivate, challenge Shedeur, find another option. Taylor Green's interesting because he has very similar strengths and weaknesses to Shedeur Sanders, but he's a bigger, stronger, faster dude. which automatically makes my eyebrows go up a little bit.
A little bit. And we've talked about some of the drafts that we've liked a lot. There were some head scratchers. There were some teams that, for as bad as this draft was, I think that they tripped over themselves making it worse draft classes.
Yeah.
I just want to start here with Arizona because I know that the running back debate is near and dear to your heart, but taking Jeremiah Love at 3 makes it a non-starter for me. Whatever you do after number 3 is tainted. When you have that many needs and you're taking a running back, when you have those offensive tackles sitting there and you have that offensive line, like Love might be, with all those missed tackles and the 4.3 yards after contact, he might mask some of those issues and those concerns. So I almost get it. Take an offensive tackle, right? Trade back, move back and take Jeremiah Love later if you want to, or take a tackle then. Carson Beck in the 3rd round. What are we doing?
What are we doing? What are we doing?
What are we doing? I know you're trying to get Mike LaFleur pieces, and you're trying to build some playmakers for Mike LaFleur to build his offense around, but that just ain't it.
He spent the last 2 years showing us that his arm was shot, and that he's not a good decision maker. That he's just good enough decision maker to bounce around AAA level, and obviously take these stacked teams and do enough. Be better than some freshman. That's like the Carson Beck scouting report in a nutshell. Shot arm, not a good decision maker, better than a 19-year-old. Period. That's kind of it with him. That was dumb. Jeremiah Love, everyone on the planet can miss me forever with you see, and you have this 20-step. I've heard every argument in the last 20 years about picking a running back early. I've heard the receiving game, or, he's going to help keep things under control until the quarterback comes. It always fails. Okay? It is always a disaster. Period. End of story. Ricky Williams, it was a disaster all the way through. Ashton Genty was a disaster all the way through. Saquon for the Giants was a disaster. Miss me forever for it. He's going to go, and he's going to be this guy who's carrying 22 times for 71 yards and 1 touchdown. And enjoy that in your fantasy team, because you're never going to be watching the Cardinals, because they're going to be in last place, 4:00 game on the West Coast while we're all watching the Broncos.
Yeah, I think that I wrote this on Friday morning in my round 1 reactions, that whatever you think of Jeremiah Love today as a prospect, that's tremendous. I mean, the film speaks for itself. The analytics show you that he can be a difference maker. You put him behind that offensive line. And if Monty Ossenfort or whoever replaces him in a year does everything right, and you get the quarterback right, and you build a functional offensive line, and you build out the defense, and in 3 years, the Cardinals are pretty decent. What the heck is Jeremiah Love going to be when you talk about the hits he's going to take behind the line of scrimmage, behind that offensive line, the injuries he's going to withstand? When you're about to get good, Jeremiah Love, the prospect in 2026, is not going to be Jeremiah Love, the player, in 2028. And that's my biggest problem with taking Jeremiah Love that high. If you want to talk to me about the Ravens making a trade like the Rams did to get up to the top of the board, we need to take a running back to pair with Lamar Jackson, that's fine. You want to talk to me about the Chiefs, if they were picking 3rd, you want to pick an elite running back to pair with Patrick Mahomes, take Jeremiah Love, go nuts, because your roster is ready for it. A running back can be the missing piece. We saw it with Saquon Barkley. To a lesser extent, we've seen the impact that Josh Jacobs and Derrick Henry make in Baltimore. Jeremiah Love to the Cardinals is not a difference maker at all.
We just did this with Genty last year. We just did this with a very similar guy last year. And the Raiders took a running back. Later on this draft, it's we're going to need to rotate these guys. The one time a top 10 running back worked recently was Ezekiel Elliott, because Tony Romo had gotten hurt, and that's why the Cowboys had fallen off. And then he comes back and Prescott replaces him. So it was a fluky thing, like the Chiefs are a fluky thing this year. Okay. Of course, they went out and got Kenneth Walker. That took them off the table for this. It's just a miss me. If the team had the quarterback, and this was a weak class, you could talk me into it. If the Giants had done it, I'd been like, I guess I see what they're thinking. Even if the Titans had done it, I would be like, I guess I see what they're thinking. Commanders, I guess I see what they're thinking. This team has Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew and Carson Noodlearm battling for the starting job. It's going to be pathetic this year. It's probably going to be pathetic next year. And Love is going to just get beaten up.
Nick Kelly checks in the comments. The hype meter was high for Jeanty a year ago, and then he had to run behind the Raiders' offensive line. Agreed. And look, Chip Kelly ruined the kid's rookie year because he changed his stance in the backfield, and we might never know if he would have been able to mask some of the issues in Vegas with that offensive line had he been able to stick to the running style that made him a generational talent at Boise State. But I think that's an interesting cautionary tale if you're hoping that Jeremiah Love masks some of those issues. Another team that I hated, couldn't stand, don't know what the hell they were doing, the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, okay.
Quincy Adolfo-Mensah would never have done this. This would never. Cressy would not have taken the injury-prone defensive tackle. I like it if Caleb Banks is healthy, what he could do in terms of scheme and traits for Brian Flores. He took a linebacker, Jake Galladay. I don't know what he's a decent player, but I don't see the need. The linebacker was one of the Vikings defense's biggest strengths, I think. Trade Jonathan Grenard for 2 third-round picks. I guess if he's not going to be back, get something for him. You took a fullback in the 5th round.
Dude, you have to replace C.J. Ham. You have to replace C.J. Ham. The last fullback on earth cannot be allowed to walk into the sunset. You had to go out and take Max Bredesen, who Matt, I'm going to tell you, though, Max Bredesen was the best fullback on the board.
Okay. He's a fullback, though. He's a fullback.
He's from Michigan. If they didn't take him, Harbaugh would have taken him for the Chargers to block for Justin Herbert. To go with that Matlock guy.
Okay, but I can almost understand that. Your quarterback is Kyler Murray or J.J. McCarthy. I don't see the need for a fullback there. Sorry, I just don't.
I think I was pretty kind to the Vikings in my grades, but I get exactly what you're saying. The Banks thing, they're not in a good boom or bust situation right now in terms of keeping that defense top 5 in the league. You can't be out there and say, well, this could be an all-pro, or he might not be able to take the field again. You can't do that with 18th overall. Galladay is a system fit for them, so I'm going to get that. He's a big blitz off the edge guy. Brian Flores is going to love him. I'll let that one go. Orange is just a space eater. So you got 2 defensive tackles. We fixed our defensive tackle situation. If one of these guys is healthy, it's that's great. Your quarterback situation's messed up. Your offensive line's kind of okay. You don't address the back end till later, although there's a couple guys I like. I would say at best, it's too risky and kind of bleh.
Lots of bleh. In a division where you're kind of looking up now at the Chicago Bears. You might be looking up at the Green Bay Packers if Jordan Love can stay healthy, and who knows?
Right.
I felt like you needed to knock this draft out of the park, and it seemed like they just didn't find value every step along the way where it seemed like they absolutely needed to.
Right. And the Lions aren't dead yet.
No.
There we go. The Lions fell off last year. It's they finally added an edge rusher. They got a half-decent offensive lineman in this draft. Maybe they get a little healthier. Don't give up on them. You're the Vikings. You're the 4th team in that division. I can see them saying Kyler Murray is our guess at quarterback and McCarthy's still our lottery ticket. Who knows? Maybe you dust him off or something like that. So you don't complicate that room. But this is very ordinary, and so much of it is just based on whether Banks is going to be healthy.
And I think the team that had the worst performance in this entire draft is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because what was that? What was the philosophy there? Because you take a tight end in the 2nd round and Nate Borkacher, when you have a rising Brenton Strange in place, who had a really good year last year when he was healthy. I'm not sure you needed Albertus Regis unless you were just so scarred by what Josh Allen did to you in the running game and the playoff game that you had to get a run stuffer. Wesley Williams out of Duke in the 4th round. I'm not sure he was a top 200 or top 220 player on most big boards.
Yeah, he's a weird choice.
Every pick felt like a reach. Every pick felt like I took a 4th round pick in the 3rd round. I took a 6th round pick in the 5th round. And it almost, to me, felt like James Gladstone, who had all this goodwill built up over the last year or so since becoming the GM. It's like he printed out the Wikipedia page of this year's draft. And he copied and pasted it and put it into ChatGPT, just a bunch of names, and said, pick a draft class for me with no regard for my roster. Find me a bunch of guys. And he let ChatGPT or Claude or whatever chatbot you're working with today make the picks. I just didn't understand. It was a collection of guys rather than a coherent draft class.
I'll start with Burkhardt, which is a young GM thinks he's smarter than everyone else move for the ages. I remember years and years and years ago when Josh McDaniels took over the Broncos, and in one of his first draft classes in the first round, he picked a blocking tight end from North Carolina. I think the kid's name was Quinn, who had like 10 career catches. 10 career catches in college. And like he was like, well, you don't understand the importance of blocking in the NFL. We don't play fantasy football here in the NFL. That's my Josh McDaniels impersonation. I know he sounds nothing like that. It's more of a George Plimpton. Anyway,
pompous enough to be your Josh McDaniels impersonation, though.
But it's like, here's the thing. If you are only a blocking tight end in college, you're not a blocking tight end in the NFL. You're a nothing burger. Okay, the blocking tight ends in the NFL come from the complete tight ends in college who are good blockers because you need that level of athleticism. You need something. Otherwise, you're going to play on special teams like blocking for the extra points. That's all you're going to do. So that's what Burkhardt is. I think he only had 35 catches in his career. Some insanely small amount of catches his entire career. I think he's 25 years old. He's 24 or 25, older prospect. That's your ChatGPT guy right there. Regis, you talked about it. I have similar things. And then, by the way, Burkhardt, then they go back and get Tanner Koziol. Because I'm going to tell you something, Matt. The Jaguars came up with a whole new strategy. It's 13 personnel, 3 tight end alignments. The Jaguars invented this. They did not copy this from anybody. They are not blatantly looking at their former employers and their mentors and seeing some other team that did a lot of 13 personnel and going like, we should do that. Like little 7th graders who have to like follow the cool kid around. They came up with this all by themselves. Gladstone and Liam Cohen were like, we're going to innovate the 3 tight end personnel package. So let's get a guy who never caught the ball in Burkhardt, and let's get Tanner Koziol, who's like 6'7" and can't block, and let's put him with Brenton Strange. And we're just going to show everybody how innovative and unique we are.
Yeah. Meanwhile, you have Parker Washington, who is like on the ascent of ascents when it comes to young wide receivers across the NFL off the year that he had. You still have Brian Thomas Jr., who you weren't able to trade, but like really playmaker after the catch. You took Travis Hunter that you could still throw in there as a wide receiver from time to time, speedy as hell. So you have all of these like really good, really young, really ascending wide receivers, and you're just going to say, we'll throw it to you guys like 6 times a game. We're going to play 13 personnel. You're going to play 20% of the snaps. So what? What is the philosophy there?
Right. I don't think either Koziol or Burkhardt was somebody who should have been taken until like the 6th or 7th round, by the way. I have an idea, though. Brian Thomas to the Giants for Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau. Let's just do it. Get it over with. I don't want to hear about either guy on either team anymore. Maybe throw Slayton in and throw like a 5th round pick back the other way. Can we do this?
I mean, yes. Get Shane on the phone. Maybe he'll pick up.
Shane is driving away as we speak right now with like the store all boxes in the back of his car.
But so I don't want to. I don't want to send Cardinals fans. I don't want to send Jaguars fans. I don't want to send those fan bases out of this podcast feeling suicidal, or people like listening to this being disappointed and thinking we're down on every single draft class. You had a great NFC grades column. Your AFC grades go up on the Two Deep Zone tomorrow. I want to throw a few teams at you. Get your thoughts on their grades. I have 4 that are written down. I'm going to pass on the Cowboys because we did that. We did them. So I'm going to start in the NFC. Detroit Lions. What did you like there? I love them getting a pass rusher. Tell me what you think about their grades.
Love them getting a pass rusher. Blake Miller's fine. I was like earlier on, like, oh my God, Blake Miller. He's probably going to be like a starting right tackle. That's a pretty worthy pick, 17th overall. Derek Moore isn't somebody that blows my mind, but when you put him across from Aiden Hutchinson and you start rotating him, because they did get like guys like DJ Wanham, it's like, oh my God, the Lions have a normal pass rush again. They have the great guy and the rotation of pretty good guys on the other side, like every other team has. And I can look at that and say, all right, that makes sense. You throw in Jimmy Rolder, who's like a system fit, thumpy dude, that Campbell type of guy. Keith Abney is another good role player. Thought they could have done more on offense, but just seeing this team meet their needs gives me the suggestion, because like there's teams who say, well, they're rising up. The Lions are the team that was like falling down. That's like they have to bulwark things and say, we still have Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson. We still have the bedrock of this, and they were beating teams by like 30 points midseason. Can they bring it back? I think they put themselves in position to steady the ship and put themselves back. I think I gave them a B+, I forget, but I was happy with it overall.
Awesome. In the AFC, I thought a team had a very similar approach, very similar results. This is one, just throwing at you, flying blind here. The Los Angeles Chargers. I like the Messidor pick. I like the fact that they seem to fortify the offensive line in front of Justin Herbert. I like a lot of what the Chargers did. I know the AFC grades drop tomorrow. What was your read on the Chargers draft and Jim Harbaugh's performance?
I love the fact that there's like 6 offensive linemen on it, because they needed it after last season. I also kind of don't like the fact that there's like 6 offensive linemen on it, because now it's almost like a paranoia thing where it's like, we can't let this happen again. So you get Jake Slaughter, and then you go out and you get Travis Burke. And I don't really know anything about these 6th-round picks that they brought in, but like, let's get some extra guards out there. That's fine. That's good. I'm hit or miss with Messidor. You know, it's a very Jim Harbaugh type of draft where it's like, I want my hustle guys. I want my eat, drink, and sleep football guys, and some of the other stuff might be secondary to that. And in the case of Messidor, I'm going to ignore his age and injury history, because he's a glass eater who wants to go out there, rah-rah, and kick some butt. Slaughter has that reputation. Justin Smith had that reputation. Brennan Thompson, you can take or leave for me. It seems like every time they give Justin Herbert a weapon, it's one of these yes, but guys.
Yeah.
Brennan Thompson has 4.25 speed. Yes, but he bounced from program to program. All he was a vertical guy. He was never useful in the return game. This makes me wonder, like, what's up with that? And that goes with, Quentin Johnston's really tall and fast, but like his hands are bad. And Trey Harris had some really good games, but they were all against like Mississippi A&I and things like that. So I think I'm putting
107 years old, right?
Right. Yes, Keenan Allen's 107, and we had to bring him back.
Yeah.
Right. So I think I'm giving this like a B or B-, but I'm trying to. I think what I say about this is, man, Harbaugh really knows how to build a team that passionately and heroically loses playoff games.
Yeah, you're not going to fool me again about Charging being dead. The Buffalo Bills.
The Bills, like, I love what they did sliding out of the first round and then sliding around a little bit, and they added a bunch of guys. So it's like, well, bottom of our roster, we're expensive at the top, we're old at the top. Got to create the opportunities, got to create the competition. So Jalen Kilgore is going to create competition. That's a good 5th-round pick. Zane Durant, create competition. That's a good 5th-round pick. Skylar Bell, I don't know. They've got this type with their receivers.
I like him.
Yeah. But it's UConn.
Yak guy. If you have DJ Moore as your top of the depth chart guy, you have Khalil Shakir as your number 2. You put Skylar and the Bell in the slot. He's a guy that I think can get you a yak machine, move the chains. I like him. I think they needed more speed at receiver, and I think they went out and they got it in him.
I guess at the 4th round, I don't hate it. It's just another catch and yak guy. They're all going to be yakking. And we now know, again, that they brought the offensive coordinator back. So is everybody going to be meshing against each other? Not a terrible pick. I don't know about Davison Igbonasan from Ohio State. Just seemed ordinary to me, and very penalty happy, and seems like he's a little bit like a overly demonstrative guy. I don't know if he's a bounce back guy, if he makes mistakes, that kind of thing. One thing I want to say about this, and I mentioned it on the internet like on Saturday, they let the Raiders move ahead of them 1 spot for the 7th-round pick in 2027 to move ahead to take Jermod McCoy.
Yeah.
That's okay. If it's one surgery away from being a Pro Bowler, if it's actually okay, and this was all something like you let that guy go. You need cornerbacks. You went out and drafted cornerbacks and safeties. Yeah. You let that guy go for nothing? It's very strange.
Very strange. And I like the Raiders doing it. I think that Jermod McCoy going to the Raiders, for them, they spent all this money getting a lot quicker, a lot more athletic on defense this year, to the point that they could afford to take a lottery ticket on Jermod McCoy. They're not close. I mean, they're better. They're probably closer to being really good in 2027, with the pieces they now have on offense and Fernando Mendoza's second year and what they've added on defense. Jermod McCoy, if he's good to go in 2027, okay, great. Awesome. You got him for nothing. You stole it.
Right. You might have gotten a Pro Bowler at the top of the fourth round for nothing, and that's a good pick. And yeah, the Raiders, the Browns, the Jets, the Giants to a degree, Dolphins, it's like these teams have not pushed themselves, except maybe the Giants, I understand that, into the playoff picture in any way, but I see what it looks like now. You put enough pieces in place where it's like, I can see how you're going to be able to compete at the NFL level this year. And in the Raiders case, you might have your quarterback, and that means a lot.
Yeah, and you did a lot this offseason to build them up and get a lot of pieces there that you already had with Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty. Last one, I'm kind of needling you a little bit here because of how we both spent this offseason on social media. Your thoughts on the Packers draft?
Brandon Cisse is a good ball player. Chris McClellan's a good ball player. And Danny Dennis Sutton is fine. He's fine. He's on that Penn State defense. He, had some moments. It's been a horrible offseason. And I'm going to be writing up the Packers separately because so many Packers fans are having a hard time just embracing the reality of how bad their offseason has been, how many players they lost. This wasn't a terrible draft, but they went out in the 6th round and got an Alabama cornerback that got benched in his 2025 season. You're drafting guys who got benched. Okay, think about that. What it takes to get benched at the college level. You have frustrated, and it was after something where he tries to blow up a guy after. I think what happens, he tries to blow up the guy after a catch and runs out of bounds, and the guy turns up field for a touchdown. And Alabama coach is like, yeah, sit down for 6 weeks to think about that. They got a kicker. They traded 2 7th-round picks to go up and get a kicker. Trey Smack. Now, I have him down as a pretty good kicker. This Packers team that lost all these pieces has the extra draft capital to goof around and trade for kickers? No. I mean, he'll compete with McManus, and you might wind up with a rookie kicker who stinks. You might wind up with McManus again. I don't know if that other kid's still around. I don't study the Packers special teams that tightly this time of year. It was a draft that reinforces the fact that all the Packers are going to be doing this year is hoping to run it back with the backups of the guys that they let go. And hoping that Micah comes back, and Micah might be back Columbus Day. That's kind of like where we're at here. It might be back the beginning of October. They're going to be looking at that schedule in Green Bay and saying, man, I hope this schedule starts out with the Little Sisters of the Poor. And it doesn't start out with the Lions in Detroit and the Rams in Timbuktu or whatever.
Back at Soldier Field. Yeah.
Right. Because they could be out there and it's like, we don't have Micah Parsons. There's a slim chance that they might be Tucker Kraft might still be on his way back at that point. Slim, I think it's going to be okay. But when you look at all that, okay-ish draft remains a cataclysmic offseason for a team that should be trying to get better and reach the Super Bowl.
I liked Sis's moxie in coverage in South Carolina. Just as a team of a guy who just wasn't afraid to get up in your face and play press coverage and go after balls. I'm kind of stunned that Dani Dennis Sutton lasted as long as he did, because he seemed like he was one of those more explosive pass rushers that I thought would get more buzz. It just never happened. But I'm with you. They had so many needs, especially getting one cornerback is nice. They needed to get 2 or 3 plug-and-play corners in that secondary, and they just didn't. And burning a pick on a kicker, not a great draft. I would probably give it a C- if it were me.
Yeah, they need reinforcements on the offensive line, too. They're pretending they don't, but they do. It wouldn't hurt just having an extra body or two at wide receiver. It's like, oh, well, we still have Bo Melton. It's like, yeah, you still have Bo Melton. Sometimes he's your cornerback, too. They haven't, they're not fostering. It's really what it is, from a standpoint of just understanding how teams have been built for years. I've said fostering competition 10 times during this. You need to foster competition. Okay. They didn't foster competition. They're handing starting jobs to people. Lucas Van Ness, you're a starter now. You haven't been a starter for 3 years, but you're a starter now. Jordan Morgan at left tackle couldn't win the job from Rasheed Walker. We just got rid of Rasheed Walker. So you get to be a starter now. I think his name is Belton, the left guard. You couldn't beat out Morgan half the time, but you're the starter now at left guard. It's fine. Hey, Matthew Golden, you couldn't get on the field past Dontavian Wicks last year. But we got rid of Wicks and Dobbs. You're the starter now. That's not how it's done, folks. That's a recipe for disaster. If these guys, and I mentioned those are a bunch of first-round picks I mentioned. If they were good, we wouldn't have been talking about Rashawn Gary, and we wouldn't have been talking about, Elgton Jenkins or Rasheed Walker or whoever else, because they would have gotten the jobs. Okay, they didn't. Now they've got them by default. That's bad.
Yeah, it is not going well in Green Bay. What do we have coming up on the Two Deep Zone in the near future here?
I just realized I have to make a couple corrections to the AFC grades because I forgot that guy when I was looking at him right now. That'll be out tomorrow morning, first thing, and then a couple of days off here in Two Deep Zone headquarters, and probably we'll run a Packers thing because the Packers are very controversial right now in my mentions, and I want to put on paper exactly some of the things I just talked about. What do you got coming up?
Yeah, I have two ongoing series that I'm kind of excited about. I don't know which one I'm going to kick off now. I don't know whether there's more upside to grading every team's offseason, including the draft, or the one that I've kind of teased to myself as the tentpole of the summer, the 5 best players in each division and the one non-quarterback that an executive that I speak to would build his team around. So we're going to debate in our minds which one we want to start this week, which one we want to hold off for later. But those are two things that we have on the calendar and have on the list here Between the Hash Marks.
That's a great idea. At some point, I will be kicking back off the Signature Moments series. I have to go in and do the Buccaneers, which means we'll be looking at Tom Brady. We'll be looking at, Dexter Jackson intercepting passes in the Super Bowl. Rondé Barber making a fool out of Donovan will be on there. So I'll be doing that. And then, I got to do the Cardinals. But then good teams will come. I'll have to do the Rams and the Seahawks. Yeah. I mean, beast mode with the Seahawks and all that stuff. A lot of fun, interesting stuff. That's going to be a week or two on the line. I need to catch my breath a little bit.
I think we both do. Both of these go out, touch some grass, get some fresh air. Maybe meet up for a cocktail or a liquid lunch at some point between Two Deep Zone headquarters and Between the Hash Marks Central. Mike, this has been a lot of fun as always. Appreciate everybody who tuned in. Bunch of people in the live feed. If you missed the live podcast, please go ahead and check us out in the Apple Podcast Store. Leave us those 5-star ratings and reviews. Subscribe to Between the Hash Marks on Substack. Subscribe to the Two Deep Zone on Substack as well. Mike, look forward to this in a couple weeks from now. I'm Matt Lombardo. He's Mike Tanier. We'll talk to you in about 2 weeks back here on the pod.